Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Shaping Your Success channel, brought to you by Hay Legal and the Law Society of Scotland. As you may all know by now, the Shaping Your Success channel is all about bringing people together who have expertise in other fields beyond the law, but also have insight into the legal sector. So we have a perfect guest who fits that bill this morning, who is Grant Yule of Denovo. Denovo will be known to many of you. Grant is Head of Marketing, and our talk today is titled From Toy Story to Law Firm Success. Grant, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Ali. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. So thanks very much for joining us. So I think today, so people know what's coming up, we're going to talk about your role in international marketing, and then we're going to ask you about what struck you when you became involved in the legal sector, and what impressed you and what surprised you. And then at the end, we'll talk about the opportunities that you see from a marketing and business perspective for law firms going forward. So I wonder, could you tell our audience just about the role that you had before you became involved in the legal sector, please?
Sure, no problem. So my role now is Head of Marketing at Denovo Business Intelligence. I entered this world of legal tech about 3 years ago. Prior to that, I spent just shy of 10 years growing and marketing the retail toy brand Hamleys. And during my time there, I joined around 2009, and it was really start of a kind of evolution at Hamleys. And during my time, we grew the business from one store in the West End of London to, I think by the time I left, there was around about 180 stores globally. I was lucky enough to organise some of the largest toy brand events in the world, and had a lot of fun doing it. And I think for me, when it comes to the marketing side of things, when I was there, we focused on experiential marketing, and that's something that I want to dive into a little bit today. Some would call it maybe engagement marketing, but experiential marketing essentially is it's just a strategy that immerses customers within a product or a brand and kind of deeply engages them. So in short, it enables the consumer to not just buy a product or service from a brand, but to actually experience the brand. And throughout my 10 years that I spent at Hamleys, I was lucky. You mentioned about being involved in international marketing, and I was very lucky. Like I said, there was a kind of evolution going on there at the time, and we were expanding globally with a kind of global franchise model. And I was lucky enough to travel the world in my position at the time, which was senior marketing manager. And that included a brand ambassadorial role, or at the very least, a kind of brand protector role, which we were rolling out a brand on a global scale. And it was important that someone was there to ensure that our brand identity, our guidelines, etc., were adhered to. I suppose in short, it was my job to build a global marketing strategy that could easily be adapted to different, and in some cases, new and evolving markets, no matter where we set up shop, be it South Africa, Russia. I'm sounding like a real globetrotter here, but China, the UAE, India, wherever. The key was always to provide the consumer with an experience that would create a positive memory, given the moments really that they could treasure. In this case, it was with their kids primarily, but it was never really about the toy the child would get. That was nice for a child, but the focus was always on the experience. The child, the parent, the grandparent, the auntie, uncle, brother, sister, whoever it may be. That's what would keep them coming back, and would encourage them to seek out the next moment, the next event where they could create more great memories. It made marketing the business a hell of a lot easier, to be honest, because consumers who had those experiences would literally go searching for the next thing. So what that meant in terms of from a digital marketing perspective is that our social media engagement and the visitors to our website increased quite dramatically. And this was across the board in every region, because we were constantly creating content that would educate the consumer about what was happening in the store and the experiences that others were having to try and encourage them to seek out that same experience. And I suppose for me as a marketeer, and I've been involved in this my entire career to date anyway, marketing is all about the experience. And it's from the moment you step over the threshold, so be that physically or virtually, any business, and whether you're speaking to a member of the team, you're engaging with the brand online, you must remember one thing. I would say this to anyone, is that every little thing you do is going to affect the perception of you and your brand. And when I worked at Hamleys, it was about being the finest toy shop in the world. It wasn't just about selling the best or most exclusive toys. Whenever you thought about a brand, it gave you a good feeling. And for me, that's marketing in a nutshell. It's the art of getting people to change their minds or to maintain their mindset if they're inclined to do business with you. So every little thing you do, you show and say, not only your content on your website or the way that you interact with someone, a client, for example, when you're speaking to them, it affects the perception of your brand. And I think what firms should really recognise is that your whole brand identity is being considered, be that online or physically.
Grant, thanks very much for outlining your background. Fascinating to hear about other industries and their approaches. So going forward, you then find yourself moving from Toy Story to law firm success, as the title suggests, and you find yourself interacting with lawyers and seeing law firm environments. Can I just ask, really, first impressions, what struck you as being impressive about that world and what surprised you about it?
Yeah, I suppose first and foremost, the conversation has definitely changed from Barbie and Lego. But I think for me, it was interesting coming into this world. I think eye-opening is probably the best way to describe it. My sort of initial reaction to working with lawyers and different firms, it's been eye-opening probably for a few reasons. I think firstly, it was finding out that there's a stereotype of firms working in quite a kind of antiquated way. I think that I would say that's probably true in quite a lot of cases, but particularly when it comes to online presence, I found it quite astonishing initially that many firms out there didn't have basics like websites. And even I would say the ones who did clearly didn't utilize them to the best of their ability. This is your business card, right? This is your shop window. And it didn't really feel as if there was maybe the care and attention being put towards this as much care and attention as there probably should be. It felt as if they really weren't updated, not really optimized for search. And the second thing that really struck home for me was the kind of lack of content being created to assist clients. This comes back to consumer experience for me. So if I'm the client and I'm searching for a lawyer, are you making it really simple for a prospective client like me to, number one, find you, number two, engage with you, and number three, choose your service over the competition? And moreover, once I've then chosen you, what is the experience of using your service actually? Are you on par with other brands outside the legal sphere? That's something I'll talk about maybe a bit later on. But unfortunately, for many, I think the answer was, and still is in many cases, no. But my eyes were also open to the reasons why many are not getting the basic of marketing right. Many of the SME firms out there are run by lawyers. They're not run by managing directors or CEOs. They don't have marketing teams necessarily to size, new business teams, etc. Although new business teams is a trend that we're seeing start to come into the industry a lot more for SME firms. These are lawyers running businesses, most of whom have never really worked in any other business environment. They went from a traineeship in a firm to working in a firm to run the firm, and they've not really been exposed to any other work environment. So it's easy to just do what you've always done. And I think that's where the stereotype maybe comes from. It's maybe I think there's bravery in it to adapt to changing environments and changing consumer habits. I think you have to be brave to approach it. I think you have to be brave to do it, or at least to test it out and try something that's different from the norm. And I think the challenge is that the next generation of lawyer who are starting their own firms, and many of them have taken the opportunity to do that during and then post pandemic, is that they are starting to take a different approach. So they're digital first. And this is not new. I feel sometimes when I talk about this, digital marketing is something that's new. It's been around for a long time. I just think that the legal profession has been slightly slower than others to really catch up and to grab it with both hands and use it to the best of their ability. So firms who have been around for a while, I think in many cases, are now in catch-up mode, and it's not the best starting point. However, it's the ones who recognise digital marketing, specifically improved client communication, is the way forward. They are now putting things in place to compete, which is great. However, there are many out there who are getting spot on. I was just recently having a conversation with a client of ours who's a family law firm, started up during the pandemic, and is absolutely laser focused on marketing their brand. Just like a fantastic website, optimized, creating content on a regular basis, and social media engagement as well, and really using the platforms that clients are using to communicate. And that's key, right? So you've got to have these things in place. Now, lots of people out there would probably ask, we don't have time to do that. Then that's where there's support out there to help you with those things. But it's worth the time and financial investment to get that absolutely. And I think for firms to grow, you need to really start with a positive ethos, really focused on your cultural values, and be laser focused on developing your brand and services that focuses on the why you exist rather than really the what. And so I think for many out there, the goal is to be more than just a company, an organisation that sells a legal service. I'm fortunate enough to have lawyers in my family, and this means that I'm acutely aware that there are many law firm businesses out there who were and are operating quite well, and they're making money, and that's fine. But in many cases, particularly with SME firms, there is a missing component. And that component, I think, is the ability to create a simple, cost-effective marketing strategy that will generate new business opportunities and create loyalty from existing clients. I personally see many sleeping giants out there, particularly in the Scottish legal community. And I think if given the opportunity, I would personally love to spend some time with firms out there and maybe impart some of my marketing knowledge, expertise, particularly when it comes to around consumer experience, because that's the starting point. You need to get that right before you start thinking about spending any real money anywhere else. And impart that knowledge onto law firms. And at Denovo, that's one of the things we're always looking to do, is add value to how we support law firms, or law firm partners. Adding a bit of marketing advice and even get a bit of consultancy into the mix is something that I'm keen to do. Just spend a bit of time just trying to help, because there's plenty of opportunity there that you can do things really cost effectively. They're quite simple, that won't take a lot of your time either. Let me put it this way. So I'm talking about having worked for a retailer, and there might be people watching this who are going, well, this law firm's 100 miles away from that environment, and you worked for a brand that had an experiential arsenal. And I'm going, okay, but let's think about this, right? So a law firm works in a transactional business environment, right? So you sell a service, the objective is to be the best in your field of expertise. You want to build a loyal customer base by offering a great service or experience. I think that's what everyone wants, but you're also competing against some big players out there who are spending more money and telling more people about the product service. So it sounds quite like it sounds like a retailer to me, all right, or at least there's transferable elements. And I think what everyone in the legal profession should really recognise is that their competition now extends further than the new firm who set up shop at the opposite end of the high street. That's clear as day to me. Amazon, Deliveroo, these are just top of my head, Deliveroo, ASOS, even Hamleys are now the competition. Just to put that in context, if you're watching, ask yourself, what's the expectation in 2022? So here's an interesting thing. So Amazon stated recently that their record click to delivery to someone's door for a food order in London was 6 minutes. Googled that. Now, my next Google search was Amazon plus time travel. That just sounded ludicrous, but it's an incredible stat and true, apparently. So see the customer that's likely receiving that order. They're probably millennial, Gen Z, whose expectation is now exactly that. So next month, if that order comes in 30 minutes, it might never be, but if it is, are they going to be happy? Maybe, but they're probably not going to be over the moon. So when someone calls to speak to a fee earner, how long do we think it's acceptable for them to wait for a response? So in their head, they're going food, 6 minutes, but then returned call from solicitor, question mark. So that's the customer experience to expect. And I think law firms need to act on that now in order to be able to compete. There's figures released in 2021 saying that fewer than 10% of prospective clients who call law firm actually get to speak to a lawyer. Interesting. And more than 40% of them who left a voicemail or filled a web form wait for 2 or 3 days before they hear back. Just think about yourself as a modern day consumer and think about having to wait 3 days for something to happen. I know that there's a lot of other variables involved with receiving legal support, all right? But if you're just Googling a lawyer for something that's happened in your life and you're trying to find your solicitor, are you going to wait that length of time, or are you just going to move on to the next firm on page one of Google? That's the question the involves got to be asking themselves. Are we missing out on opportunities because the expectation of this consumer has changed so dramatically? They expect instant gratification, and that means contacted or at least acknowledged very quickly. So I think in short that most law firms, I think in short, this is changing all the time. They didn't really have the best reputation when it came to customer experience. You can say it's a big problem, but I just see it as a big opportunity. And I suppose if you're listening to me and you're a soap at this now, you're a high street firm, you might be thinking that offering this exemplary client experience, it's years away from the reality of working in a busy high street facing being at high street firm, being at COVID. My question is why? In a legal market it's inundated with choices, it's now not enough, I don't think, for businesses to rely on unique selling points or even brand. Almost more than a service, you need to sell an experience, and that experience begins with your relationship and communication with the client. Your job's a force for good, and you can make someone's life better. That's just a fact. The aim is to give sound advice. In most cases, law firms will deliver on that expectation. If you're good at your job, you can do the legal work. However, your client doesn't really have a method of assessing the quality of the service they receive. So I think what they'll do is they'll just assess the experience they had. So you could argue that you go, if you have a successful outcome, you go, well, it was a good experience, but was it? You get working late nights, clients taking their calls, losing your bloody hair over divorces and labour disputes and contract negotiations. You're fighting hard to obtain the best possible outcome for your clients. And even after all that, how many of clients often limp away thinking that using your firm was actually maybe quite difficult, even jarring, maybe unreturned calls, uncertainty about progress, the surprise fee, etc. Why should that level of customer service for purchasing rattan garden furniture on Amazon or a toy from Hamleys be a better experience than when you're going through a divorce? Potentially one of the most stressful periods of life. Of course, it's a much longer process, but the reality is that if the experience is positive in terms of how it's actually handled, that's what the person is then going to tell someone else about, who's going to tell someone else, who's going to tell 10 people. Even if the outcome for them wasn't a success, if the actual experience of using your law firm was positive, you're still going to get positive feedback from them. And when the customer experience whether it's positive or negative, how are you ever really going to know? You ask. And you always need to ask, because how else are you ever going to know how to improve? And I think, honestly, trust me when I say, no matter how good you think your service is or how good you think the legal is, there's always room for improvement around the experience. And the people that tell you how to do this are not lawyers in your firm or sitting in a partners meeting. It's your clients.